Hey everyone, in this video I'll be building the Tokio X. Ever since I started flying this frame, it's made me a much better pilot, not only because it flies so well, but because of the protection. Not breaking a lot of parts means more flight time and more time to practice. This is by far the easiest quad I've ever built. That's one of the things I really thought about when I designed this frame. It needed to be easy to build and easy to work on in the field. The Tokio X comes in two frames, the True X and the Stretch X, right here. Both have their different flying characteristics. The X is better for all-around flying with a mix of freestyle or racing, or generally just flying around in the park having fun. It has a really nice balance feel on all axes because it's a True X. And the Stretch is awesome for racing due to its longer pitch. This makes it really stable in the corners and easier to maintain altitude because it just locks in that pitch. So you don't really have to mess with pitch, you just mess with the throttle to maintain altitude. Building the X and the Stretch X will be exactly the same, except the motor wires on the Stretch are slightly longer because it's a 220 millimeter frame versus a 210 on the X. So if you're using the Tokio build kit, there'll be two sets of motor wire cut lengths. There'll be one for the X rear, X front, SX rear, and SX front. The reason for that, the different lengths, is because the flight controller stack is a little bit offset to make room for the camera. So let's talk about this build. I'll be using the Lumineer Lux V2 flight controller. I've been using this board for the past 4 to 5 months, and it's been rock solid for me. These days the software for flight controllers are so good. They pretty much all fly the same if it's tuned right, whether it's KISS, Revolt, Lux, whatever. I've tried them all. When I choose a flight controller, what's more important to me now is reliability and ease of install. The Lux is very easy to install, and I've never had an issue with them. You'll see how easy it is to install later. And then for the ESCs, I'll be using this Cicada 35 amp 4-in-1. Ever since I started building with 4-in-1 ESCs, I haven't built the traditional way, one ESC on each arm. These are much easier to install because there are far less wires and soldering needed. With the traditional way, you have to solder something like 10 power wires, 2 for each of the 4 ESCs, and then a battery cable. With a 4-in-1, all you have to do is really do the battery cable. And in most cases, this eliminates the need for a PDB. So I think once you learn how to build with a 4-in-1 ESC, you won't go back to building the old way with 4 on each arm. So for the motors, I'll be using the T-Motor F40 Pro 2400 kV motors. These are my favorite motors right now. The 2600 kV version are even more powerful than these, except they are battery killers. They're not very efficient. The 2400 kV have a good balance between power and efficiency, and I've never had one go out on me or even damaged. You can tell when you pick this thing up, it is really well made. It is a very good quality motor. For the camera, I'll be using the Foxeer Aero V3. It has basic OSD showing you stuff like battery voltage, flight time, or even your call sign. You can write your name or whatever on the OSD. That's all you really need, since we'll be running the telemetry from the XSR receiver, this receiver right here. These cameras have by far been the most durable cameras that I've used. If you open this thing up, you'll see that they put like the silicone glue around the sensor to help it absorb impacts and prevent the sensor from coming apart. And for the VTX, I'll be using the FX799T. It's a 200 milliwatt 40 channel basic transmitter. I really like this transmitter because it's really easy to use, gives you a great signal, and easily mounts on the canopy. It's got one button push feature. You push it down, do a long press to change the band, and quick presses to change the channels. And it's yeah, and it's small. It fits in the canopy really well. So let's get on with the build. So the first thing we'll do is install the butter mounts for the flight controller stack. So the butter mount is something I invented to a way to mount the flight controller onto the frame without the vibrations from the motors reaching up to the gyro on the flight controller. So the first thing you'll do is you will identify which side is down and which side is up on the frame. So the side that is down is the one that has all the milling on the frame, because it needs all the milling so the bottom can be completely flat when you build your quad. So grab one of these little grommets. These will all come in the Tokio frame, and just pinch it, and then go from the top of the frame. I don't know if you can see that. Just pinch it and then just kind of squeeze it and push it through. There you go. I'll just show you how to do one of these. And then you'll just take one of the M3x12 motor screws and put it in through the bottom. The bottom is the ones with all the milling. Put it through, and then get one of the small plastic nuts and just screw it onto the So you don't want to screw this thing on very tight. The way I do it is I turn it until the nut just touches the rubber on the grommet, and then I just do like one more turn. Don't worry about if it's real wiggly right now. Once you mount a flight controller stack on there, or the ESC, it'll be very secure. There's no way the screw is going to come out of this hole. So just do the same for the rest of them. So once you have all 4 of them installed, this is what it should look like. Once again, don't worry about if it's real wiggly. It'll be really solid once you put a stack on there. By the way, this is a gyroscopic screwdriver. I freaking love this thing. You basically just push the button, and then you tilt it the way you want it to turn. So this thing makes building really quick or changing props really easily. Freaking love this thing. I'll put a link of it to the Amazon link in my description below. Okay, so once you have the butter mount put on there, we're gonna prepare the ESC to be mounted onto the frame. First, we're gonna remove the plastic cover off the ESC. You don't have to, but I like to do it because it's really not needed. Just gonna put this aside because if you get confused later, there'll be a little marking right here telling you which signal wire is what. Alright, so because the canopy mounts on the screw right back here, we have to unsolder these power cables and just move them like 45 degrees, so that way the mounting hardware will fit easily onto the canopy. So we're just gonna undo these, and I have my soldering iron set at like 850. I always set it about around that high, even if I'm doing small little wires, because I found that what destroys boards is not how much heat you put on there, but how long you put the heat. Sometimes if these big pads are kind of stubborn, I add my own solder, and it kind of helps distribute the heat, and it makes it come off pretty quickly. So we're just gonna move it like 45 degrees. Or actually, we're gonna take it off. We'll put it back on once we have the XT60 on there. So I'm gonna use my cheat sheet to cut the length for the battery cables. This is the positive. and then negative. This is a cheat sheet I'll be using. This will come with the Tokio build kit if you're using the kit. If not, you'll just kind of have to eyeball how much you need to cut off. Now we got our power cable 45 degrees from the board. We're going to mount the motors onto the frame. So first I'll show you how to do, I'll just show you how to do one of them. Alright, so since we're building a Tokio X, I'll show you how to do, just say the front arm here. I'll go this way. Front arm, go here. And just cut the wires to the length you need. So I just cut the motor, mounted it onto the frame, put my heat shrink on here, and pre-tinned the 3 wires. So I'll show you there's a certain way on this frame that you need to mount these wires so that the canopy will fit. You can't just have them coming out the side going this way. It has to be kind of like in a line. I'll show you what I mean. So first I'm going to tin these wires, or the pads on the ESCs. Makes it a lot easier to do. So since we're using the Lux, it supports BL Heli pass-through, so it really doesn't matter which way you connect the motor wires, but just make sure that you have them connected like in a line this way, so that way the canopy will fit without any issues. So now I got all my motors mounted onto my ESC. As you can tell, the longer wires go on the front arms and the shorter are on the rear, and the motor wires are all kind of like in a line. I don't know if you can see that. So that way when you have the canopy, it'll just sit right on top without the motor wire shooting out the sides. And also just a quick tip, as you can tell, I don't have the standoffs that go onto the screws yet, because I found that if I have the standoffs on there and I'm trying to do these solders, I end up just melting the tip of these plastic standoffs. So I just put one little nut on the ESC just to keep it down a little bit. So next we're going to prepare the rest of the ESC with the VBAC cable and the FPV part. So the cool thing about using a 4-in-1 is that it really gets rid of the PDB, the power distribution board. Using this board, you really don't need one because all the ESCs are already powered through the battery cable. And if you need to pull any battery voltage off this, off the battery, there's a little, I don't know if you can see, but if you look closely, there's a little positive and negative pad right here. You can use these to power your flight controller or your VTX or anything like that. So next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get ready the power for the FPV part. So I'm using the FX799T, which comes with this little 12 volt regulator. I mean, you could use this, but I'm gonna use a Pololu, a little 12 volt Pololu. The purpose of using a 12 volt regulated source for your VTX is because one, you'll get a cleaner image because the regulator filters the noise coming from the motors before it goes to your VTX. And also these motors are so powerful that when they break, they shoot a lot of like noise and voltage spikes back into the power system. And if you have those voltage spikes constantly hitting your VTX, you're eventually gonna kill it. So I mean, really, you could power your VTX directly off the battery. It'll work, but eventually it'll die. Every quad that I've built that has the VTX powered directly off the battery, eventually it'll kill your VTX. So what I like to do is run it through a 12 volt source before going to the VTX. So you can either use the included 12 volt regulator that comes with the FX799T, but this one is a little big. I mean, it will work, but you'll have to put it on top of your stack. The way I'm gonna mount it, I'm gonna use this small little 12 volt Pololu, and it's gonna sit right here on the side, or after I wrap it and everything, it'll sit right here on the side, and then the XSR will sit right next to it, and then the Lux will go on top, and everything will sit nice and neat under the flight controller. So if you're gonna use this bigger one, you'll probably have to power it like this, and then it'll have to sit somewhere in your canopy. Alright, so the way I'm going to hook up this Pololu is, I don't know if you can see that because it's really small, but if you go on my website, I have a whole diagram, a whole schematic of how this entire quad is going to be wired up. So on the back of the Pololu, you have a V in, a ground, and a V out. So obviously ground is going to go ground to your battery, and then V in is the power coming in, so that's the dirty power. That's the power coming from the positive lead of the battery to the V in, and then the V out will be the clean power going to your VTX. And then because we're running this Foxeer Aero 3, it's got a wire called VSEN, which is this blue wire on the harness. If you connect this blue wire to the power source or your battery, it'll show you your battery voltage, but make sure you connect it to the V in, which is the dirty power, because you want the voltage of your battery. If you connect it to the V out, all it's going to read is 12 volts. It'll always say 12 volts in your OSD, which is the power going out of this 12 volt regulator. So now I'm going to prepare the Pololu for the VTX part. First I'm going to put it in my soldering vise. This is a handy little tool I designed. Helps with soldering. So I'm just going to tin the V out, V in, or the ground, and the V in. You're not going to use this SHD, whatever that is. You can ignore that. Alright, so first we'll connect. If you get confused at any point of this, you can go to the website, and I have the diagram that shows exactly how to hook up everything right here. So this is going to be the power that goes to the Pololu. So I'm just going to cut this wire. And I'm going to just splice and tin it. You don't want to cut these wires exact, because I'll show you why in a little bit. You want to give it a little bit of slack, so when you take the canopy off, or when you're putting it on, there'll be enough slack to where you can easily reach the connector. So just tin this, and then I'm going to connect ground to ground, or actually I'm going to face it this way. because once I heat shrink it up, these little thin wires will be smushed against this pololu, and it won't come out. So this is going to be going to my VTX, so this power will be going to the V out. First I'm going to put ground and then put V out on the other end. And then since I'm not using this this bigger regulator that came with the VTX, I'm just going to use this wire. So go ahead and just chop this wire off. And then just splice and tin one end. Alright, so this is the dirty power going in. This will be coming from the battery. So alright, so I'll show you close up of what I have. So this, well, this is confusing. I'm going to cut this off. This part will be connected directly to your LiPo battery, and then this part coming out will go to your VTX. So you can see it's this is V in, ground, and then ground, and then this red is going to V out because you want the 12 volt regulated. So one more thing to do on this pololu before we heat shrink it up, and that's to connect our VSEN wire. So the VSEN is for your OSD. So you're just gonna kind of eyeball how long to cut this one, because say your battery, well, your pololu will go here, and then your VSEN will connect to your camera, which is somewhere over here. So you really only need maybe like inch and a half. So I'm just cut and splice. So the VSEN is going to come out this way. So this one is the VSEN is going to go to the V in, which is the dirty power coming from the battery. Alright, so this is what it should look like once you're done. Hope you can see that. Once again, I have the schematic for all this on my website. So, where's my tweezers? So this is going to the VTX, V out, ground, and then V in, which is battery, and VSEN. So the last thing we need to do for the FPV part is get ready the camera cable. So you can go ahead and remove this green wire because that's audio and we're not going to be using that. Alright, so on this you're just going to kind of eyeball this also. Your pololu is going to go here, and then your camera will connect somewhere over here. So your camera wire is this one with the big fat square thing, and then the other end of the VTX wire, this orange, red, and yellow, will connect to your camera. So you'll be using the power output from your VTX, because the VTX, it can take voltages from 7 to 24 volts, I think, and then it'll output, I think, 5 volts or something for your camera. So the power that's coming out of this VTX is already clean because you have a clean source coming in here, and then this will connect to your camera wire, and it'll power your camera. So the camera has 3 wires. It's got black, ground, power, and then video, and then this 2 wires is for the OSD. Once we set the OSD, we can remove it, and then this is the VSEN. Your VTX has power coming from the clean source, and then it outputs power, ground, and video. So you're just going to connect these 3 wires, power, ground, video, together. So this is what the pololu VTX harness should look like once you're done. This is going to go to your the battery going into the pololu. You got the voltage out and your VSEN going into your camera, and then this power is going to the VTX. Okay, so once we're done with that, we'll just kind of measure it out and then figure out how much wire you're going to cut. I'm going to have the pololu sitting right next to or on the side of the ESC here, so I'll just kind of measure out how much wire to cut. So for this, I'm going to use this small little pad that's on the ESC. So alright, so there's just one more thing we have to do on the ESC before we move on to the flight controller, and that's just to add a little a VBAC cable. So I'm just going to use the wire that's on this regulator again. Pull this off. All I'm using is a wire. We don't need the connector. And then use my little cheat sheet again for the VBAC. So I'm just going to splice and tin one side. So once I got my VBAC cables spliced and tinned, I'm actually going to solder it coming out at a little bit of an angle, so it'll be out of the way right directly under the lux, because it gets a little bit tight under there. So this is what I mean. Just solder it to where it's kind of coming out the side. Alright, so this is pretty much, we're done with the ESC. We can move on to the flight controller. So this will go directly onto the lux. So next we can get the lux ready to be mounted on the quad. So really, for the sake of the video, I'll show you the build part first and then the flashing. But really, before, usually when I do a build, before I do anything to the flight controller, I'll hook it up to BLHeli and do all my flashing and setup before I start installing. The reason for that is, say if you get a bad board for some reason, it does happen, you install everything and then you end up, when you try to connect it, it won't connect or whatever, it's messed up. You have to redo everything over again. So it's good practice to do the flashing first, just to make sure there's nothing wrong with the board, and then do the install. But just for the sake of the video, I'll do the install first and then do the flashing later. So the only thing that needs to be done on the back of the lux is there's a little jumper. I don't know if you can see that. There's a jumper on the back of it. One says 5 and one is 3. If you're using a FR Sky system, you'll use the 5 volt. If you're using Spectrum, you're gonna jump the 3 volt. So just connect it like this, and then I'm just gonna, because I'm using the FR Sky XSR, I'm gonna jump the 5 volt. And then I'm going to go ahead and put some tin on the ground and battery. That'll be for when I power up the lux. So this is what it should look like. You have the jumper on the 5 volt, and then I just put tin on the battery and ground. And then just to make things go a little quicker, I'm going to go ahead and cut all the wires that I need. For the XSR wire, where is that? Okay, so this is the harness for the XSR receiver. We can go ahead and remove this green pin because we won't be using it. This is PPM. We're running S-Bus. So the white wire is the RX, yellow is telemetry, red is power, and black is ground. So I've already got this little cheat sheet right here. For the black, red, and white, you're going to cut it one length, and then for the yellow will be another length. So now we'll cut the signal wires for the cicada. So I'm just going to use this cheat sheet again. If you're not using this, you'll just kind of have to eyeball it when you have it hooked up. So just have it, make sure you have the lengths cut according to the colors. because if you don't do it right, you're gonna have too long or too short wires. So blue is number 2. And then pay attention to this part. It goes 1, 2, 4, 3. That's how the wires are connected. I'll show you what it looks like later. So if you're using this cheat sheet, make sure that you have on the cicada, make sure you have the battery side pointing up and the connector side facing down, because if you have it flipped, then this cut pattern and the way you hook it up in the schematic won't work. It'll be flipped. So just make sure you have the battery cable side up on the cicada. Alright, so I'm gonna mount the lux going the normal direction, meaning the arrow pointing to the front, and then I'll have the XSR will be under here with a cable pointing out this way, but I'm gonna run it under the board. So I'm gonna mount everything this way. So I go ahead and pre-tin the pads that I need. This is the RX signal. This is the 5 volt. And then the ground. And then the telemetry is this little T5. So it goes ground. The easiest way is to melt the solder on the board and then just push this wire in. And make sure you do it quickly, because these boards are pretty sensitive. These pads can come off pretty easily. Alright, just a quick tip before we move on. When you're soldering these power cables over here, make sure when you solder, your solder doesn't get onto this bar right here. Because earlier when I had everything connected, I hooked it up to my multimeter and I connect the positive negative. It was causing my continuity beeper to go off, and that was because I had a little bit of solder from the negative onto this positive, and it was causing a short. So it's highly recommended to have just a basic multimeter that has this function right here. This is a continuity checker. This basically tells you if you have any shorts in your system. So what I do is always connect it up to the battery before I power it in for the very first time. If you have it buzzing like that, it means you have a short. Because if I would have tried to plug in my battery, I would have fried this whole cable and probably my ESC. Okay, so before we move on, we're just gonna check the voltages coming out of the Pololu. Before I plug in the battery, I just fixed the short that was from that little solder coming onto that pad. So first, set your multimeter on the continuity. It'll tell you if you have a short somewhere. Check it again. Everything's good. So we're just gonna plug it in. So it's only giving you the half chime because the ESCs aren't getting a signal from the flight controller. So I'm just gonna put this little piece of cardboard under the Pololu just to make sure it's not touching the ESC, because it's not covered yet. So we're gonna check the voltages before we cover the Pololu. Just set it on 20. So the voltage here should be whatever your battery is. 16.3, and then we'll check the voltages coming into the Pololu. $16.3, and then we'll check the voltage coming out, which is around 12, close enough. Alright, so next I'm gonna put some heat shrink over the Pololu to protect it, and then we'll mount the Lux. Alright, so I just put some heat shrink around the Pololu. Now we can mount our Lux. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna solder the power cable onto the Lux. So the cool thing about the Lux is that it can take power directly from the battery. You don't need like a 5-volt BEC or anything like that, like the Revolt. So the flight controller is going to point to the front. So it's going to be like this. So we're just going to connect the power cables on the back side of the Lux. Okay, goes like this, and I just put on the standoffs over here. For now, we'll leave the XSR. We'll connect the ESC signal wires first. So this is gonna go on there like this, and then we'll just connect the connector harness onto the ESC. So now we have the connector in, we can connect the ESC signals onto the Lux. So this is how you're going to connect the ESC signals. The orange wire is going to be signal 1. The blue wire will be 2. The yellow wire will be 4. And then 3 will be the green wire. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to put these going under the Lux just to clean things up a little bit. Under. So we're going to do orange to 1. And 3 is green. If you get confused, I got this whole schematic on my website again. It'll show you what color goes to what. And then, let's see, blue is 2. So blue goes over here. And then 4 is yellow. Alright, so once we have that connected, we're pretty much done with the soldering part. I'm just gonna connect my XSR. So the wire is gonna go under here, and then this will connect to my XSR. And then it'll sit under the Lux like this, next to the Polo loop. But when you're putting this on, make sure you can kind of move these parts around to make sure they sit and not too tight. You can kind of poke these wires around to make more room. But when you do this, just make sure you're not pushing it so hard to where the bind button on the receiver is getting pressed down. I usually have it like right next to this SD card thing, so it's not get pushed down, because if it's pushed down, you're not going to be able to control anything on your quad. So that's pretty much it for the soldering part of the quad. So before we get into Betaflight to program the Lux, first we need to set up our Tyrannus. In the video here, I'm only going to show you the very basic switches you need to assign in order to fly the quad. I'm not going to show the entire Tyrannus setup because I've done several videos of that in the past. I'll show screens on how my Tyrannus is set up for the telemetry and all the switches and everything. I'll post screenshots on my website, and if you're using or if you're building with the build kit, I'll include the Tyrannus backup file with everything already programmed, and I'll make the file available on my website. So if you want the file, just hit the link below in the descriptions below and it'll take you there. So first, turn on your Tyrannus.
Welcome to FlightClub.
0 volts engine off.
So go hit menu and then just go to an empty channel bank. Hold enter, create model. And then from here, page down, here is where you name the model. I'm gonna skip everything. I'm only gonna show you what you need to fly the quad in this video. So go down to page 6 of 12, and then go down to channel 5, which is auxiliary 1. Channel 1 through 4 you can't assign to a switch because these are assigned or reserved for flying the quad. So channel 5 will be auxiliary 1. Channel 6 is auxiliary 2, 7, auxiliary 3, so on. So for auxiliary 1, channel 5, just hold enter, and then go down to the source, and then this one, just assign whatever switch you want to use for arming. I'm going to assign SD for my arm, and that'll be channel 1. And then that's pretty much all you have to set up in your Tyrannus. Next, we need to bind the Tyrannus to the quad. So from your model, hit page down or menu, and then you can hold page down one more, and then scroll up to bind. And then from here, to bind the Tyrannus, all you do is set the Tyrannus in bind. And then you're gonna push the bind button on the XSR while plugging in the battery. So hit bind. Just hold down this button on the XSR and then plug in your battery. And then you're gonna let go of the battery and the button, and now when you exit out, your Tyrannus should be bound. You should see a green light. Alright, so first we're gonna download Betaflight Configurator on our computer. So Betaflight Configurator is a part of the program on Chrome. So first you need to download Chrome if you don't have it already, and then go here, type Betaflight Configurator. And then add it to Chrome. And then while I'm here, I'm gonna go ahead and download or add the BL Heli configurator. So type in BL Heli configurator. And add to Chrome. Okay, so once you have that, open up Betaflight, and then connect your USB onto your Lux. Alright, so when you're here, make sure this auto connect is not connected. If this is your first time using Betaflight, make sure you go here and you download the CP210X drivers and the VCP drivers for your computer. Because if you don't do this, you're not going to be able to connect. So once you have your USB plugged in, go ahead and hit connect. Okay, so everything connected, so I know the board is good and functioning. So I'm going to disconnect, and then first we're going to flash the Lux with the latest firmware. So go here, and it's loading, choose your board. We're using the Lux V2, and then I usually just choose the latest firmware. So right now it's 3.1.7. Then go here, load online, and then flash firmware. Okay, once you see this, that means the board is flashed and you can connect. Alright, so okay, on this screen, all you have to do is calibrate the accelerometer. Just make sure your quad is on flat surface and just hit this. Give it a few seconds to level out and you're done. And then go to ports. So ports, if you don't have this configured correctly, your Lux won't see your receiver. So just make sure you have this one turned off, and then for UART4, you're just going to turn on the RX, 0RX. Hit save and reboot. So I'm just going to go over these configurations really quickly. If you're using the kit, once again, I'll have a backup folder that has the Tyrannus backup, or I mean the Betaflight backup with all the settings and my PIDs already loaded in. If you're using that, you can just use this restore button. Just click restore and then go pick the file that you that'll be included in the kit. But I'll just show you quickly how to configure this. All right, so for the ESC protocol, since we're using the Cicada 35 amp, they come flash with at least 16.5. 16.5 is the minimum you need for D-Shot. If you don't see this D-Shot option, or if you don't have this set right for your ESC, you're not going to be able to arm your motors. So if you're not seeing D-Shot over here, I'll show you later in the BL Heli configurator how to get D-Shot. So once you have this set, scroll down, you can skip all this, and then make sure this is set on S-Bus. Scroll down, and then I'm going to turn off the accelerometer. So what the accelerometer does is it lets you arm your quad when your quad is not on a level surface. This is handy if just say you get stuck up in a tree and you land upside down. This is going to let you arm your quad when your quad is upside down, because if you have this on, your quad has to be at a certain angle in order for you to arm. So just go ahead and turn that off if you want. Make sure telemetry is set. I'm not using this or the SD card. And then I'm gonna permanently enable air mode. Air mode gives you control of your quad when your throttle is at 0. If you don't have air mode turned on and you have your throttle at 0, you're not going to be able to control your quad. So make sure that's enabled. Save and reboot. So I'm going to skip the PID tuning tab for right now. Right now we'll go to modes. So the only mode I have set on mine is the arm. I have my Tyrannus switch that I showed you earlier set on auxiliary 1 and then high position for arm. And then if you want to set up your flight modes or anything like that, this is where you do it. But all I use is the arm. So hit save. And then for the receivers tab, the only thing you have to change on the receivers tab is change the channel map to this TAER1234. This is for the Tyrannus. Hit save. So next we'll go to the PIDs tab. These will be my PIDs for this setup. These are what I fly. PIDs are very subjective. One PID might feel good to one person, but it might suck for another person. This is what I prefer. But I know if you have these set using the parts in this build, your quad should fly fine with no oscillations. So these are my basic PIDs, and then the rates are, it's preference. This is what I fly. I'll just enter my settings in real quick. So RC Expo, if you want a softer center stick right here, you turn up the Expo. If you want a more sensitive, more linear graph, you turn this down. This is going to make your sticks towards the center a little more sensitive or softer, whatever you prefer. And then I've got my TPA set at 0.25. So TPA is throttle PID attenuation, meaning say you have your PIDs, your P set up to a feeling that you like. It's really nice, sharp, responsive. But when you give it throttle, you have a little bit of oscillation, but you still like the feel of the quad with the settings here. So this is when you would go into the TPA and set, a number. So this means at throttle 1650, it's gonna cut down the PID controller by this much. So if you're having problems with oscillations when you're giving it a lot of throttle, you might want to mess with this number, turn it up, and it'll kind of tune down the PIDs at this throttle. Alright, so next is the motors tab. So since we're using D-Shot on this setup, you don't have to calibrate the motors. So on this screen, we're just going to use the motors. We're going to spin them up individually just to make sure that, you know, ESC1 is spinning motor 1, ESC2 is spinning motor 2, 3, and 4, and in this direction. So once you got the battery plugged in, we're just going to spin the motors up one by one to make sure the correct motor is spinning in the correct direction. So I'm just going to put a piece of paper over the motor to make it easier to see which way they're spinning. So for motor 1, this one should be spinning clockwise. And it is. So motor 2 should be this one, and it should be spinning counterclockwise. And it's not. So we're just going to make a note of this. Motor 2 needs to be reversed. And then motor 3 should be spinning counterclockwise, sorry. And it is. And then motor 4 should be spinning clockwise. And it's not. So we'll need to reverse motors 2 and 4, and I'll show you how to do that in BL Heli. So to program your ESC, just open up BL Heli and connect the USB to your Lux. And then go and hit connect. And then before you hit read setup, plug in the battery. Once again, make sure you do this with the props off. And then once you have the battery connected, hit read setup. So once you're connected, you can see here how everything is set up on your ESCs. You got ESC 1, 2, 3, and 4 here, and they're running 16.5 firmware. I'm just going to go ahead and update it to the latest one. So let's go ahead and hit flash all. Leave the ESCs here. Versions, I'll just pick the newest one and then just hit flash. And then you'll see them individually flashing. So this will take a second, just leave it alone. Alright, so the firmware is done flashing. Now we're just going to reverse the motors that we needed to do. So earlier we did the motor test, and motors 2 and 4 need to be reversed. So you're just going to go here, ESC2, just going to go here and go reverse, and then ESC4, go reverse. And then once you're done, hit right setup. And then when you disconnect, you'll hear a tone. Your ESCs are pretty much set up. So now that we got everything configured, we can finish building out the rest of the quad. First, I'm going to just put some little nuts onto the flight controller. Before you do that, just make sure everything is fitting nice and loose under the flight controller, especially the XSR bind button. I'll show you in a little bit. Alright, so my Lux is on. Just make sure when you have it mounted that the bind button on the Lux is not being pushed by this SD card reader, because if it's being pushed, you won't be able to control your quad. Alright, so next we're going to install the camera onto the frame. Since we're using the Aero V3, the bracket that it comes with is actually a little bit too short for this frame. So I designed this flexible TPU mount for the V3 on the Tokio. I'll have one coming out for the Swift cameras by the time this video is out. So this is going to go like this, and then you'll just use those little screws that came with the camera and screw it onto the camera. So I like using these the flexible TPU mount because when you crash, if you're using the metal ones, the metal ones bend, and then you got to bend them back, and after a few crashes they get pretty mangled. So the good thing about these the TPU flexible ones is that they flex. So when you hit something, it just bends and then goes right back into position. So it kind of adds an extra layer of protection for the cameras. I usually fly with about, I don't know, about a 40 degree angle. Alright, so once you get the camera secured in place with the angle you want, take a little M3 nut and put it into the bottom of this the mount, and it kind of holds it in place. And then on the bottom of the frame there'll be a slot with different positions. I usually use the second hole in here, and then just put your camera on here. Oops. Move these out of the way. Put your camera here and then just screw it in. You might need to use some pliers or something to hold that nut while you tighten it. The TPU is not meant to hold the screw while you're tightening. It's just to kind of hold it while you're getting the threads in first. So, cool. Once you have that in, just go ahead and plug in your camera. Your power lead is going to be on the very left. And with that, you're pretty much done with the build. Next, we're going to mount the canopy. Just in the kit, you'll get these. You'll get a little screw, a washer, and then get one of the 10mm standoffs and screw it into place like this. So make 2 of these, because this is how you're going to mount. This is the mounting hardware for the canopy. Once you have these, oh, I forgot to mention. The only time I've ever had issues with the mounting on the camera is this screw coming out. So I'm not going to show it in the video, but get some blue thread lock and put thread lock on these, because once you have these thread locks, there's no way your canopy is going to come off. So the way I put these into the canopy is I put it on a screw or a screwdriver and then just push it in like that. And then there'll be another one in the front. Make sure you do this before you mount the VTX, because once you have the VTX mounted, it's going to be really hard to get it into this hole. And then next we'll mount the FX779 VTX. So the way this mounts is I'm just going to put the SMA through this hole and then grab the antenna and screw it on. By the way, I'm using these orange antennas, which are left-hand circular polarized. I've been using these for the past month and I really like it, because usually when you go to a race, like 90% of the people will be running right hands. So if you're running left hand, you'll probably get a better image than most of the people there. Oops, make sure this is plugged in. And then once you have it plugged in, I never really use the antenna ports on this canopy. What I usually do is just put the antennas inside the canopy. I've never had an issue with this. If you're running a small race or any race, you shouldn't be flying, you know, like quarter mile away anyway. Because if you crash, you're gonna have to go a quarter mile to pick up your quad. But for small races, it's perfectly okay to leave your antennas inside the canopy. I've never had an issue. So before you put the canopy on, just plug in your VTX. So the first time you put on your canopy, it might be a little bit tight, but the good thing about these TPU canopies is that they're flexible, and after time it'll kind of mold to your quad. So first time is gonna be hard. After that, it should be pretty easy. So line up the standoff and then just put one of these countersunk screws, tighten it. Same thing for the bottoms. Make sure your battery cable is out of the way. And then put your other screw on. So that's it. So As you can see, the canopy is really easy to get on and off. That's one of the things I really thought about when I designed this quad, was that I wanted it to be easy to access the inside of the quad for building, and if you're at a race and you need to do any quick changes, all you have to do is remove 2 screws and the whole canopy comes off and you have access to the inside of the quad. So now we're pretty much done building the quad. I'm just gonna plug everything up and show you how everything is set up on my quad. Again,
Gentlemen, welcome to Fight Club.
0 volts engine off.
These settings that I have on the Tyrannus right now are not only the settings I showed you how to do earlier. This one is my regular Tyrannus file that I use for every single one of my builds. That's why I was kind of skittish on showing you all the settings, because I really don't remember, because I don't set up my Tyrannus every single time I build a quad. I just run the setup, copy it, and then change the name. So if you want this backup file, I'll show you all the screens that I have on here if you want to go down and you know, copy all the settings. Or if you get the build kit, it'll include the backup file for this, or I'll just make it available on my website. One quick note is I'm running the Tyrannus M9 gimbals on here. I freaking love these things. Before I updated my gimbals, I thought the gimbals were just, you know, longer lasting, more durable gimbals. But these gimbals are actually, they feel a lot better, and when you're flying the quad, it gives you a much better feel. So I highly recommend these gimbals. So I'm just gonna plug up a battery and then I'll show you all the settings. So I'll be running these these graphene packs that I have. This one is an 1800 pack. For normal flying and, you know, practice, I run 1800 packs because they're really not that heavy for 1800 pack. Yeah, but they're really not that heavy, and they give me really good flight time. And then for races, I'll use like a 1500 pack. So let me just turn it on.
Gentlemen, welcome to Fight Club.
0 volts engine off.
Plug it in. So this will be my arm.
Engine on.
This
Engine
arm.
off.
If you hold page down, you'll see my telemetry screen. This is my flight timer. I can reset it if I want using this SC switch. This is my current battery right now. This is a little bit old battery. This bat is my Tyrannus battery, not my flight pack battery. RSSI is currently 87, which is
79 dB. 83 dB.
alright. If I hit this switch, it tells me the voltage.
15.5 volts.
And then T2 is my flight timer. To see your timers, you can scroll down here. This is my flight timer. This only starts when when the throttle goes above 0. It starts both timers. This is a overall flight timer, and this is my race timer. 2-minute race timer with a 10-second countdown. So we're pretty much done with this quad. The only thing left to do is maybe heat shrink these arms if you want, but I'd highly recommend putting some Velcro on the bottom of your quads. This helps keep the batteries in place, even when the Velcro strap is on here. Keeps the battery from slipping up and down. So we're gonna slap some props on this and go for some flights. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions, put the comments down below, or you can hit me up on my website. As always, thanks for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe.
2 minutes and a half.